Hey Team YouTube, because I believe in, setting myself up for failure, I'm gonna try to install this harmonic balancer on camera. This of course is the one with the threaded through holes through it. This is the 3400, not the 3500. You can also tell it because it has the ring on it, and because the sensor needs to be here, the crank position sensor, the external one. So first thing, gonna put a little bit of the shaky camera, a little bit of the Mega Black, like black magic. We're gonna put that on the keyway of the balancer here. So, and of course this is all gonna go in one take. Sure, right? Yeah. I've already cleaned it out with a little brake clean. Hopefully this stuff will just stick right on down. Oh, looking good so far. So, I always like that when it happens. So, the other thing is, apply from my cool Wizard of Oz oil can that I found. Let's see here, yeah, check that out. And gonna put some around the outside of the shoulder on the torque limiter, good God, on the harmonic balancer here. Just take some oil, smear it around really good. Torque limiter, God, that's from work. I sell torque limiters at work to people. So, in addition to other things, you're gonna make a lot of oil there, get it all oily. And now, I'm gonna put this thing on. And by the way, we're expecting a big old snowstorm here today. And try to move that on as much as we can. I'm going to use the old impact wrench trick here. Hopefully we have enough thread to put this on, get it started. So, got the bolt. Oh, we're not even close to being on yet. Let's see here. We are not catching yet. All right, I'm gonna stop the camera for a second, get a little bit of extra purchase here. Hey Team YouTube. So, what I'm going to be doing is have this nice big socket here, and I'm just been kind of tapping a hammer around it. That's slowly moving it on. Of course, you could go and get yourself a crank pulley installation tool at one of your auto parts stores or whatever, but I figure as long as I'm not hitting this super hard, I'm good. Of course, people will tell you that you can use an impact to install one of these, and the caveat there is, of course, you want a good, not really a 1/4 inch of thread, depth. You want at least 1/2 inch of thread depth, and to really pull it on, have the impact help pull it on, because you don't want to risk damaging the threads inside of the crankshaft. This is coming along, and like I say, I'm not using super huge hammer hits. Of course, the warning for that is you don't want to hammer this thing because you'll ruin the thrust bearing inside of the motor. But I figure as long as it's nice light hits like that, and I'm just kind of eensing this thing on, it's a technical term there, eensing, things will be all right. Hey Team YouTube. So I struggled mightily to get this harmonic balancer all the way on. Come to find out, this is all the way on. It's about 3/16 of an inch that the face here is proud of the drive shaft, pulley, drive shaft. And lo and behold, this is something that, if you look at the provided crank pulley, it has a shoulder right there on it that is about, I don't know, 3/16 of an inch or so. And a cool feature on it, here I'm trying to sit there, is a pin that looks like it's milled in, a hole is milled in, and then a pin is inserted that goes right in your keyway. Obviously, if I was thinking more the other day, is how this whole thing goes on and aligns itself timing-wise. Wow, yes, he can be taught. All that education, and look where we're at. So, the other thing is, you get a bolt here that will be longer than the standard harmonic balancer bolt, and it didn't come with this washer. I grabbed a zinc-plated washer at work. I don't like the idea of substituting a standard hex bolt for a flange bolt. The washer helps to take up the slack in terms of making it all better in my mind in terms of spreading that load out like a flange bolt does. So here we go. We're going to put this thing on, get that little pin into the keyway, and away we go. Hey Team YouTube, got the Rendezvous out here, and it is a beautiful February, almost March morning, and it's 20 degrees warmer than it was a few days ago, some cases 40 degrees warmer. Just an update on the 34 to 3500 swap in my Buick Rendezvous, and what we're looking at here is the crank position sensor adapter bracket that comes with the swap kit, and it goes in 2 threaded tapped blind holes on the side of the block. One of these is where you would normally plug in a little power steering line bracket that holds those things. It's kind of a plastic and metal dealy, and I've noticed on the 3400 equipped cars like the Malibu and the Grand Am, they don't have one, but on the vans and the Rendezvous and the Aztec they do. Down here there's another bolt that goes into an unoccupied hole. There we go. So, and then there's a little Allen head screw on the back of the, there we are, right there, that holds in the crank position sensor that you would harvest off the back of a 3400 motor. Of course, here is that crank wheel that gets bolted to the harmonic balancer, and struggled with this until I realized this was actually installed perfectly. I didn't realize how the shoulder and everything kind of interacts, so things are good on that. Let's talk about the rest of the kit now. The last 2 items of any importance are the little machined brackets or spacers for the coil pack bracket. I'm going to figure out how those go, and then I'm going to go ahead and update the video. In the kit are the little aluminum coil pack bracket and screw combinations. One threads into here, and it goes right into a tapped blind hole in the block. The other is a threaded hole, and it goes through the little ear on the coil pack base right there. The other one is over here. And of course, I'm a total genius. The only place on the whole intake that I decided to thread and tap the vacuum port that is recommended in the Milzy Motorsports instructions, I put it super close to that. I did end up taking the coil pack bracket and grinding it down a fair amount, and there's room enough there for my vacuum fitting. As you can see, right back here, I have the vacuum fitting that comes from the fuel pressure regulator, and it's a T because in the original 3400, of course, the map sensor is, this is actually more buried under the intake, and this goes up to the map sensor to provide the vacuum reading for the manifold absolute pressure, of course. Wow. Genius. So here is the 3500 map sensor, and I elected not to use the 3400 because this one actually works great, and it's literally the same plug-in from the 3400 wiring harness that is part of the injector harness, and also plugs into your cam position sensor, as well as your coolant temperature sensor, as well as this big plug over here. Where did it go? Oh, comes out back there and comes up here. Oh, what the hell? It's kind of stuck back there. There we go. So, this big old hootin' and hollerin' thing that of course goes with the main wiring harness plug right here, kind of falls across the top of the intake. That's for another time. So if you were paying attention from before, I had a leaky power steering pump, and I just elected to replace with new. So that is installed and snug. And let's go ahead and move on here. And one of the other things is you have your PCV valve. Of course, I shared earlier that I had taken my 3400 valve covers and moved those over, because even though these little studs here, you'd have to drill those out and then retap. I've seen that done on YouTube to replace the PCV valve. It's better than the one that they have on the 3500, where you essentially have to replace or pull out the entire valve cover just for a PCV valve. So here you have the 3400 tube here, and it goes into the top of the intake manifold, and that's a nice fit right there. Someone was thinking ahead. Down there, it's hard to see there, part of the wiring harness, the coolant temperature sensor pigtail goes to the coolant temperature sensor, which I'm just going to point. It's like straight down that way. So let's see here. Another thing is, this is the map sensor pigtail that they give you, and this portion of this map sensor works great. This is the 3400 map sensor. As you can see, it wouldn't grip into the motor on that little boss right there like the 3500 does. That's more for a tube. The 3500, trust me on this, I'm not going to disassemble it, has a little grippy feature. It looks like a big rubber barb fitting, and it plugs right into the manifold. This 3-pin connector here doesn't work with the 3400 wiring harness. It's just it's too wide. The pinout's right, but it's too wide. And the stock 3400 harness works great. Moving on to that other nice part of the kit, you have your throttle body adapter bracket here that goes from the intake, and this is Allen head screw territory here with 4 of them that just bolts on. These little things up here are for the throttle body bracket, and this is looking good. I got my little coolant bypass. I elected to go ahead and use that from the 3400 to make it as stock as possible right now. With the 3500, you know, a tune and a delete or things like that, you don't need those anymore, especially if I was to use the 3500 throttle body. The other thing that they recommended is that, and this is something you can't see, but in the right here on the throttle body, you have the IAT bypass, and it's just recommended to machine up on that surface or use a Dremel or whatever. I had a fellow at work use a vertical mill to remove about a 1/4 inch of material, so that the IAT, excuse me, not IAT, the IAC inlet air control motor works acceptably well. One thing I would caution is that when getting that machined or taken out, that you clean the throttle body very well. I noticed, I thought the fellow at work had kind of blown it off a little bit. There was a fair amount of aluminum dust on the flapper plate there. You know, this thing kind of resting in the back of the throttle body, and so I took the you know, little bit of throttle body cleaner and went to town with a paper towel just to make sure everything was not going to get aluminum sucked into the engine. And of course, you're going to have the, make sure you get a, you know, throttle body gasket at your local auto parts store, $5-6. So that's sort of the thing. Got some other stuff. I'm going to turn off the camera and go show it to you. Hey Team YouTube. So this is the biggest hack job I'm going to do of this whole swap. This is the evaporative emission sensor from the 3500. It's about 3 inches long. I elected to cut it off with a cutoff wheel and fill it with some RTB on one side, and then fill this on the other side. This will bolt onto the motor. Let me show you where. That feature right there. There's a hole in the thing there. Boy, this is hard to get at. Oh, and it's sunny and there's glare on the camera. But it would bolt in right here, and then the hole that it would plug up is right there. Milzy Motorsports does offer a cover plate with a bolt to go there, and I'm just electing to be cheap right now. And besides, it's my prerogative. Of course, I'm going to reuse my evaporative emissions solenoid here that will go on this little end right there. I don't know exactly how I'm going to install it, if it'll just be some cable ties or whatever to just kind of lash it in and secure it, we'll figure out that out when we get there. But I know I bought this thing, I bought one of these a couple of years ago, so this is not the original one, I don't think, or well, maybe it is, but I know at least for one of my 3400 power vehicles I have purchased this before. This rubber 180, however, is a new kit. It's one of these Dormans right here that comes with the PCV valve elbow and that 180 bend. It's a formed bend, and without that you can have vacuum leaks, as I discovered on another vehicle, 3400 equipped vehicle recently. One of the special things about the Aztec and the Rendezvous application of the LA1 engine is that there is no EGR valve. They somehow achieved emissions without having to worry about an EGR valve, and so literally there is a plate that goes over the upper intake boss where that EGR would go. And there's a long stud there because that's where, if you can see that hole there, that is a little bracket on the, yes, the transmission dipstick, because, oh, you wouldn't want to make a bigger pain in the butt in the world than to be able to have to somehow lash that thing on to the top of the motor. I can tell you for sure, in the 3400 cars like the Grand Am, that is not like that. And I don't know why they elected to do it. Yeah, I guess I can see the transmission dipstick wobbling around in vibration, I guess. But boy, it just sure seems like a solution without a problem. Moving on. So I think it was, maybe it was Archimedes who said, "Give me a lever long enough and I shall move the world." My modern corollary is, give me enough RTV and I'll seal up a colander. So RTV got the hose clamps on that section of hose, just smeared those ends, pretty much the entire length that's inside the tubes, kind of smeared it all with RTV, and can't add any coolant for 24 hours. Got a new O-ring seal on the coolant bypass here. That just, I think I had one of those lying around from somewhere. So over here, it's all buttoned up nice with the nut on the underside of the throttle body. Oh, looky there. I think that's it. And then just need to tighten up the worm drive hose clamps there. Just went ahead and used the factory hose clamps underneath. I don't know if you can see that or not. So, dang, I like this camera even though it's old. So, all right, let's get on with it here, YouTube.